Hi guys, it's me, Chazza HD, and welcome to this full review of qualifying for the 2018 United States Grand Prix. Hopefully you guys are all doing well after qualifying, which ended about 3 hours ago. It was an interesting session, not the most exciting of the season, but it was definitely interesting. I just want to ask though, guys, is the stream okay in terms of connection and sound and all? Because I'm having a couple of small issues on my side, so if you can offer me some feedback, that'd be great. But hopefully you're all doing well, whether you're in Australia, as I can see Niblo in the chat as always. If you're in the UK and Europe, if you've joined me for this, thank you very much for being up so late in this part of the world. And if you're in North America, great to see you, and well, obviously great time for you guys. But yeah, if there's any problems with the stream, guys, give me some feedback and then I'll try and fix it if I can. But guys, if you somehow missed qualifying here at the 2018 United States Grand Prix, let me take you through the results. Here is your top 10. So Lewis Hamilton again takes pole position. Second is Sebastian Vettel, but will start in 5th for the Grand Prix because of that 3-place grid penalty for going too fast under red flag conditions in practice 1. Kimi Raikkonen is 3rd, Valtteri Bottas 4th, Ricciardo 5th, Ocon 6th, Hulkenberg 7th, Grosjean 8th, Leclerc 9th, and Sergio Perez in P10. And then your bottom 10 is Sainz 11th, Magnussen 12th, Gasly and Hartley 13th and 14th. Of course, not doing lap times because they're going to be starting the race anyway at the back of the grid because of engine and gearbox penalties for Toro Rosso. Max Verstappen 15th because of a right rear suspension failure in Q1. And then knocked out in Q1 is Fernando Alonso, Sergio Sirotkin, Lance Stroll, Marcus Ericsson and Stoffel Van Dorn. Everything okay? Right, okay. Just looking at the chat there. Everyone's saying it's okay. Right, I'll press ahead then with this review of qualifying. And first off, we go to Mercedes, who once again, with Lewis Hamilton, got pole position. But it was not as easy as it was, say, in Japan 2 weeks ago. After Q1, it was looking as though Mercedes were going to get a usual dominant 1-2 finish. But then after Q2, Ferrari clearly turned the wick up and I think kind of scared Mercedes as to what they could do against them once Q3 came around. At the start of Q3, after the first runs in Q3, Mercedes, even though Hamilton was on pole, there was definitely more time there, and the Mercedes was definitely not, I think, the fastest car in qualifying today. But as Lewis Hamilton usually does at the end of Q3, pulls out a great lap and ends up being on pole position. Again, I don't think the Mercedes today was the faster car. I think Ferrari had a faster car in qualifying. But Lewis clearly has enough talent to be able to get pole in what was quite tricky conditions. The track is still quite green from the rain yesterday. Very cold as well. So I have to say another, maybe not great, but definitely good pole position there for Lewis Hamilton. And this is what Hamilton had to say after his pole position. This is what he said. That was close. The first Q3 lap was decent. The second, though, was just that little bit better. I'm really happy with that. That one was very important. It was close out there. We move forward to tomorrow, where we'll give it everything that we have. And, well, as he said, the first Q3 lap was a decent lap, for sure. But the second one was just good enough, as he pretty much said there. When he says we'll move forward to tomorrow and we'll give it everything we have, I think they're going to have to, because Ferrari are a lot closer than I expected, than I think everyone expected coming into this weekend. So they are going to have to push as hard as possible and perform as well as they have this season if they're going to get Lewis Hamilton to win the race and win his fifth World Championship tomorrow over Sebastian Vettel. But here are some stats for you guys regarding Lewis Hamilton. So, of course, qualified on pole with a 132.237. That's the new lap record of the Circuit of Americas, and he did 19 laps in qualifying. That is now his third consecutive pole position in Austin. In 2016, he got pole, and in 2017, he got pole ahead of Rosberg and Vettel, respectively, in those seasons. So Hamilton is just dominant at this track. But for Valtteri Bottas, let's just get on to him. After Q1, he was looking good, I think. But then after Q2, it just looked as though he didn't have enough within himself to compete with Ferrari and his teammate. Quite surprising, because I thought Bottas would be at least in third place, but just didn't turn up when it mattered at the end of Q3. His final lap in Q3 was quite scruffy. It definitely could have been better. He went quite wide at the final corner on exit. So Bottas not doing the best job there, but in tomorrow's race, he starts in third because of Vettel's penalty. So, you know, if Ferrari are not that quick on their strategy and are not just that quick in terms of raw race pace, Bottas still has a chance to finish second and complete what will probably be a Mercedes 1-2 if he does finish second. Of course, though, we'll have to see what happens with Ferrari. So we'll move on from Mercedes and now go on to Ferrari, who I have to say, this was probably their best qualifying session since their home race in Monza. They didn't make any mistakes as a team. Sebastian Vettel, though, did make, I think, a slight mistake on his final run in Q3, but that's just the way it is. You can't be perfect all the time. He finished up in second place, did that slight correction of his car. I think it was around turn 14 and turn 15. Did that cost him pole position? Maybe, but at the end of the day, he has a 3-place grid penalty, so it doesn't matter massively as to, you know, where he's starting tomorrow's race. And the plus side, actually, from qualifying in P2 and getting that penalty is that he now starts on the clean side of the grid. If he qualified in first, he would have started on the dirty side of the grid for tomorrow's race. So there is a plus side to him qualifying in second place, but he was definitely disappointed at the end of qualifying. And this is what Sebastian had to say after the session. It was pretty close. It's always a shame when you miss out by that little bit of time, just 600ths of a second. That is very, very close. But he says, I'm happy though because we found our pace again and came back in good shape. And that's a good point. Ferrari, you know, we've ridiculed them over the last 3 races about how poor their pace has been and how poor the team all around has been. Even though Vettel made that mistake during the whole red flag in FP1 and made a slight mistake on his final Q3 run, you have to say Ferrari, in terms of the trackside operations side, are doing a lot better than they were in Suzuka, in Russia. So it's good to see that Ferrari are making less mistakes than they have at previous races in 2018. For Sebastian Vettel, what can he do from P5? I'm not too sure. I think a podium is definitely up for grabs, but it's going to be close between him, his teammate, Bottas, Ricciardo, and Lewis Hamilton. It's going to be very close. So I'm not really sure right now where I would place Sebastian at the end of tomorrow's Grand Prix. But for Kimi Räikkönen, he qualified in third, but will start on the front row of the grid. He was, for a time, on pole position by about 2.5 tenths, but then Lewis Hamilton and Sebastian Vettel completed their laps after him. I thought Kimi did well. I thought Kimi had a good qualifying session. He's had a good day overall. He was second in practice 3. Kimi's had a good day. You got to remember, qualifying is not Kimi's strong suit. So if this is what he's like today, what could he possibly be like tomorrow? You really never know. He could he could win tomorrow's Grand Prix. It'd be great to see that. I don't... If you asked me right now, I'd say no. I don't think he will. But, again, in F1, you never know. And this is what Kimi had to say after qualifying. And as ever, short but sweet. It's been a pretty positive day. We got pretty close. I feel good with the car. It's a long race. We'll try and make a good start and go from there. Pretty simple words from Kimi Räikkönen. And I think the start is vitally important to Kimi Räikkönen and Ferrari's race. And something that's going to be a big factor tomorrow is Lewis Hamilton will start on the Super Softs. By the way, one lap older Super Softs than he probably wanted to because he went for another lap. Kimi Räikkönen starts on Ultra Softs. So, in theory, Kimi should get the better start and should get into the lead. But of course, this is Kimi Räikkönen, a man that normally does not get good starts. So I'm not going to jump the gun on that. But if he does get an initial good getaway, the grip of the tyres should allow him to get past Lewis into turn 1 and then go from there. But of course, tyre wear is going to be an issue for him in the race at the end of the first stint compared to Hamilton, Bottas, his teammate, maybe Ricciardo as well, because the Red Bull is better on its tyres than the Ferrari is. So I think if Kimi gets into the lead, he can definitely go for the win. But if this, starting an Ultra Softs strategy doesn't work, then he'll most likely finish 3rd or 4th, I think. It might affect him towards, say, the first and maybe only round of pit stops tomorrow. But that's Ferrari, who I think have a chance for sure of going for the race win tomorrow. Next up, Red Bull Racing. Daniel Ricciardo qualifying in P5, but will start in P4 because of Sebastian Vettel's penalty. Now, I'm very confident for Ricciardo, and I'm sure Nib in the chat is very confident for Ricciardo because Red Bull are a lot better on race day than they are in qualifying. And just look at Red Bull's record here at COTA in the past. Last year, they were very fast, even though they weren't starting in very good positions at all for the Grand Prix. So if they replicate that, I think with Ricciardo, at least, they should be going for a podium. And I wouldn't be surprised if Ricciardo got a podium. He hasn't been amazing this weekend, but he hasn't been as far behind his teammate Max Verstappen, who we'll get onto in a minute. He hasn't been as far behind him as he was, say, at Suzuka in practice and, Sochi. He's definitely closer to Max. And I think this is a better track for Daniel. So don't be surprised if Ricciardo ends up finishing on the podium. Don't be surprised at all. But the big news with Red Bull is Max Verstappen, who after, I think he finished up in P5 in Q1, whilst he was pushing hard on another lap, he broke his right rear suspension on a sausage curb at the exit of turn 15. And the car could not be repaired. So he was out in Q2 and will start, if he does not take any penalties, will start the Grand Prix from 13th place. Such a shame because I think he would have been ahead of Ricciardo in qualifying. And would have started P4 and would have looked quite good for the race. I think he would have because Max is good at the Circuit of Americas. Such a shame, and well, this is what he had to say on Twitter a short time ago. Unfortunately, we had some bad luck today. Our race pace is competitive though, so we can still do a good job by fighting our way forward in the race. Absolutely. The race pace is still very competitive. If he can do something similar to what he did at Russia, where he can get his way through the midfield cars very quickly, say by lap 5 or 6, you never know. He could be, say, 6th by lap 7 or lap 8 and then be nice and competitive for the rest of the Grand Prix. And remember, has a free choice of tyres for the start of the Grand Prix. So, if he wants to, he can start on super soft tyres, which I think are going to be the better compound. and then be aggressive for the last stint on the ultra soft tyres and push like crazy. So don't count out Max either. And I think last year he started, was it at the back or near the back? And he almost, and I think deserved to get a podium. So there's no reason why Max can't get a podium. There's no reason why he can't. So Red Bull, I think, are looking good despite some issues there for Max Verstappen. But guys, what do you think about Mercedes? Do you think they can win the Grand Prix tomorrow with Lewis Hamilton? And do you think Hamilton will win his 5th world title for Ferrari? What do you think of their qualifying pace? Do you think they were the fastest today? And for the race, can they win and take points off of Lewis Hamilton? And for Red Bull, despite Max Verstappen's issues, can they get a podium? Or do you think that is a bit unrealistic? Put in the chat right now and I will make sure to read it out and go through all your comments. JB says Ricciardo and Bottas could battle like they did last year here. Yeah, they could. They easily could. I think it was at the end of lap 1 last year. Ricciardo did a dive bomb into turn 1 and Bottas, let's be honest, he illegally repassed Ricciardo off the track. Dexter Hall, there's no way Max can get a podium while Vettel is ahead of him. You say that, but if you look at last year's race, Max was not that far off Vettel in the actual race time. If you take away his penalty, he wasn't that far away. So I don't believe that. If Vettel doesn't get a good start tomorrow, and Max can get up to P8 or P7 by the end of the first lap, you never know. It could happen. Botty Gamer, Hamilton has, or was, I think you're trying to say has. Hamilton has been so many times on pole. You could as well say he's Polish. Oh my god. That's not a great one. Right, I'm just going to make sure I don't miss any comments. JB, Kimi has had excellent starts recently, such as Singapore 2017 and Austria 2018. Well, no disrespect, mate, but you've only mentioned 2 in the last 2 seasons. That's not good enough, I'm afraid. Singapore, he probably would have gotten to the lead. And Austria, I'm going to count that as a forward-moving start in terms of off the grid. I know he didn't gain positions, but as far as I'm concerned, he reversed that record of not getting off the line well, because he was so quick off the line in Austria. Dexter Hall, the Ferraris are much faster than last year. I wouldn't say much faster. I think the Ferraris are probably a quarter of a second faster than they were this time last year compared to Mercedes. So that should make them competitive for the race win. Hopefully. I think we all want to see a great battle for the win at this Grand Prix. Niblo, just trying to go through all the comments to make sure I don't miss any. JB, Bottas ain't that good around Kota. I wasn't that surprised. I was slightly surprised that he was 4th and kind of non-existent. I thought he would have been in there with Raikkonen and Vettel. Maybe not beating them, but if you actually look at the lap times, he was quite a bit off. Not good enough, I'm afraid, from Valtteri Bottas. Dexter Hall, does anyone know the race pace of the top teams? We don't know, as Niblo has said, because, yeah, practice 2 was a washout. Practice 3, they did do some long runs in practice 3, but in practice 3, because it's only an hour, and they had to get ready for qualifying, so they had to do some qualifying simulations, they only got 10 minutes to do race runs, and that's not long enough. And that I think is going to make for a great race tomorrow, because teams won't be sure as to how quick they are or how quick their rivals are. So yeah, that's going to make for an interesting race for sure. But I think, guys, we'll move on from the top teams and now go on to the midfield. starting off with McLaren. McLaren in dry conditions were about where I expected. Stoffel Van Dorn qualified at the back. No real surprise. Van Dorn just can't get the pace out of that car like Fernando can, because he's not as good as Fernando, and the McLaren car is so bad. I honestly think the McLaren is worse than the Williams. The only reason Fernando is ahead of the two Williams is because he is Fernando Alonso. I honestly think the McLaren right now is the worst on the grid, and they brought an upgrade to this race. They brought a front wing upgrade. It wasn't a major one, but they brought one, and they're still slower than Williams. It's quite incredible, honestly. And Fernando Alonso in 16th, the best he could do. The McLaren, again, is the slowest on the grid, in my opinion. Fernando is such a great driver. You know, there's only so much he can do with such a crap car. So I don't think we can really say, you know, poor performances or anything from Alonso. I mean, yeah, you could say that about Van Dorn. But again, if Alonso can only qualify 16th in a McLaren, what do you think Van Dorn's going to do on a 20-car grid? I mean, yeah, it's not really a surprise. And McLaren, they've got to be hoping that 2018 just comes to a close very quickly. They better hope that this next month just flies by for them, because, well, what a disaster this season has been. But we'll leave McLaren and go on to Renault. Renault had a good qualifying, but I will say it was a bit lucky, because at the end of Q2, Hülkenberg was in 10th and Sainz was 11th. Sainz was knocked out, by the way, by 0.02 of a second. If Toro Rosso did not have penalties, Hülkenberg would have been knocked out as well, because Gasly was very quick in Q1. I think he was in P7. Very fast lap time set by him. And if he didn't have penalties and did Q2, then Hülkenberg would have been knocked out as well as Sainz, and they would have been lining up 11th and 12th rather than 7th and 11th. So I do think Renault are a bit lucky. I will give credit to Hülkenberg though for producing a great lap at the end of Q3 to get P7 ahead of faster cars such as the Haas and the Force India of Sergio Perez. Great lap, but they were a bit lucky. Let's be honest, they were a bit lucky today. But of course, for Renault, all that matters is what they do compared to Haas in their big battle with Haas for 4th in the Constructors. And, well, this is what happened in the battle between Renault and Haas. Hülkenberg qualified in P7, Carlos Sainz qualified in 11th, Grosjean 8th, and Magnussen 12th. So I'd say for Renault, a successful qualifying for sure, because even though both Renaults didn't out-qualify them, you have one just ahead of probably the fastest Haas car this weekend, and then Sainz right in front of Magnussen, holding him back. And one big plus for Carlos Sainz is that he's the first guy on the grid who has a free choice of tyres. So if he selects a compound, or if the team, selects a compound which is good, or it turns out to be good in the race, he could be on for an 8th or a 9th, you never know. And Hülkenberg, I think, has the pace to be in the points as well. So Renault are looking good. They're really looking good. They are looking better than I was expecting at this point of the weekend. Good job there by Renault, and hopefully they can start to get even better in tomorrow's race, because the last couple of races for Renault just have not been good enough in their midfield battle with Haas. And next up, we'll go on to Force India. Esteban Ocon, I have to say, what a performance. I said that he was the one to watch in my build-up to the qualifying watch-along. By the way, the link below in the description to the qualifying watch-along, in case you did miss it earlier. I said he was the one to watch, and he proved me right. Qualifying in 6th, I said he could get that kind of result, and he did. He is such a good driver around this track. He was so good last year. This year, so far on the dry, has been very, very good. I'm not that surprised, but the only thing I'm maybe surprised about is that this guy still is probably going to be without a seat for 2019, and he just put it on the third row of the grid in a Force India ahead of big, maybe not teams, but in big names such as Renault, McLaren, Williams, you know, Red Bull with Max Verstappen, even though that was a bit unlucky for Verstappen. To qualify on the third row in a Force India, that is a fantastic result. That's an exceptional result. I can't believe that guy is going to be off the grid. It's a crying shame, honestly. For Sergio Perez in P10, not good enough, I'm afraid. He needed to be, I think, at least in 8th. If Ocon can qualify 6th, Perez should be in at least 8th. Perez is not as good as Ocon in my opinion, but he's not that far off. They're still about equal, are Esteban Ocon and Sergio Perez. So for Perez to be in P10, nowhere near good enough. And he has to repair that in the race. He has to, because Force India still need those points to get past McLaren in the Constructors for P6. They're going to anyway, but, you know, just in case they have a bad last couple of races, Perez needs to be on it as well. But in qualifying, he just wasn't. Really poor, I think, from Sergio Perez. But guys, what did you think about those 3 teams? For McLaren, do you think they have the slowest car this weekend, behind Williams even? For Renault, what did you think of their performance? Do you think they were lucky to get through to Q3 with Nico Hülkenberg? And how do you think their battle of Haas is going to shape up tomorrow in the Grand Prix? And for Force India, what did you think of Ocon's performance? And what did you think of Sergio Perez only qualifying in 10th when his teammate has qualified in 6th? Put in the chat right now, and I will read out your comments and thoughts about these teams and drivers. JB, the McLaren has the best chassis on the grid. Dexter Hall, Haas will get more points than Renault in this race. They really should. This track does suit the Haas, in my opinion, more than the Renault. Grosjean was proving that in Q1 and Q2, but then Q3, maybe Hülkenberg just produced a mega lap, I don't know, but Grosjean really should have been ahead of him. He really should have been. This track does suit the Haas more, especially with that long back straight. I can't believe Hülkenberg actually qualified the front of the 4th row. I can't believe he actually did that. Dexter Hall, Williams will be faster than McLaren in this race. You know what? I actually think they will, because yes, McLaren in the corners are better, but because of that long back straight, if the Williamses are right behind, they're going to fly past the McLarens. And if McLaren are trying to get past on that long back straight or on the pit straight with DRS, their car is so slow in a straight line, they're not going to be able to do so. So, yeah, McLaren are in a very tough position. Very tough. Please, please, can this get better? I don't hate McLaren. I have criticised them heavily this season because they deserve it. But I want them to be back at the top, like Williams. I want them to improve. But I don't see McLaren massively improving for 2019. I don't think they'll be this bad. But I don't think they're going to be, say, where Hülkenberg and Grosjean were this time next year. I don't see it. I don't see it. JB, considering Perez was beaten by a Sauber, disappointing. Yes, Ocon proved that the Force India was best of the rest. So for Perez to qualify behind 3 midfield cars, the Renault, the Haas and the Sauber, that's not good enough. It's not good enough. He's got to do better than that. Especially considering he's just been announced as the driver for next season at Force India. He needs to show why he's at that team instead of Esteban Ocon. He has to show that. Jeffrey Guyot, I think that is. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Kimi's best chance in the first corner. He's on the sticker tyre, but uphill on the dirty side will be tough. You say that, but Vettel last year was on the dirty side and he beat Hamilton into turn 1. So it's not impossible. It's definitely possible. I think, though, Kimi being on the fresher and, as you say, stickier tyres might negate the disadvantage of starting on the dirtier side of the grid. I think that may help his case for getting a great start. Right, I'm just trying to look for any more comments. Scotty, another nice performance from Leclerc. Yep, it was. We'll get onto him very soon. Tonka Toy Truck. Kimi is in good form this weekend. He is. He has been. In the wet, he wasn't looking that good, but today he has been very good. This is what Kimi Räikkönen should be performing like, not like he was at Suzuka or Sochi. Leclerc is the man. Prussia says Ocon being replaced by Stroll next year, so sad. It is. You can call me a hater of Lance Stroll all you like. I don't hate the guy. I just don't think he's a good driver in terms of, you know, the drivers he's racing in Formula 1. He's not a bad racing driver, but he's not good by F1 standards. And I can't believe that he is going to be replacing Ocon at the team. Of course, I know why, because his dad now owns Force India, but it's unbelievable to me. It's absolutely unbelievable. JB, I feel as though Leclerc went unnoticed. Don't worry, we'll cover him and how he did throughout the session in a short while. Dexter Hall, my feelings is that because he's secured for next season, Perez doesn't think he needs to beat Ocon. I was thinking that whilst I was talking about Perez, is maybe Perez thinks, right, I've got my seat. I just don't need to do anything for the rest of 2018 now. Of course, at Mexico, he's going to be good because he needs to be in front of his home fans. And for his, you know, massive Mexican sponsors and backers. But here, Brazil, Abu Dhabi, does he really need to actually be good? Because he's secured his seat. It's a good point. It's a good point. Usman Khan, how long will you be live for? I'm aiming to be live for probably another 20 minutes at least. Yeah, say another 20-25 minutes. I'm going to get onto the rest of the midfield teams. And then I will reveal to you guys the schedule for tomorrow on this channel. Guzwin says, really, what's up with Hartley compared to Gasly? Well, Hartley this weekend hasn't been too bad. It wasn't too bad in Japan. Hartley has been improving, by the way, in the last few races. You can't doubt that. Still not good enough, though, I think, by F1 standards. JB, Ocon is great around Mexico. He got his best result last year at P5 and qualified ahead of Ricciardo. Did he qualify ahead of Ricciardo? I think he did, yeah. Yeah, Ocon will be good, I think, at Mexico. But I think Perez maybe won't be better, but he's definitely going to be more competitive and more fired up next weekend than he is this weekend. Even though there are Mexican fans at the track, of course, he's not going to be massively fired up because it's not yet his home race. But I think, guys, we'll move on now to the final teams on the grid. First off, Williams qualifying 17th and 18th. Sirotkin again out qualifying Lance Stroll. You know what? I think Williams did. I thought they did well. Yes, 17th and 18th doesn't sound good, but I think they did prove today that they do have a faster car than McLaren, and that they've had a faster car than McLaren probably since Russia or maybe Monza. They've had a faster car. They clearly have. Fernando Alonso, yes, out-qualified them, but you can't judge how fast the McLaren is by what Alonso is doing. Just look at what Alonso did in his Ferrari days. That Ferrari was not as fast as, well, as he was. It wasn't as good as the positions he was putting it in. Just put it that way. So I think Williams today proved that they do have a faster car than McLaren. And for tomorrow's race, if there is some chaos, some retirements, and they get a good start with one of their drivers, of course we know Lance Stroll can get a good start. I don't see why not. They could get a surprise point. I know it's unlikely, but again, if there's chaos, some retirements, one of them gets a good start, who knows? Maybe something can happen. We'll see what happens in the Grand Prix. Toro Rosso, Toro Rosso really, this session was a basically useless one because we all know the penalties they had coming into the weekend. So we all knew that qualifying for Toro Rosso was going to be a nothing session. But I think with Pierre Gasly, when he finished up in P7 Q1, that again shows that Toro Rosso and Honda continue to improve. I cannot wait for Honda to put their engines in the back of the Red Bull next year, and hopefully Honda just continue to get better next season. I'm not going to get my hopes up because I did for 2017 with McLaren, and look how that went. So hopefully Honda continue improving, and hopefully Toro Rosso have a good end to 2018. It looks as though as Honda keep bringing improvements, Toro Rosso might have a points finish in the last 4 races. I'm not sure they will tomorrow, even though Gasly is pretty quick. I'm not sure they will get to the points. But for the final 4 races, with the improvements Honda are making, I don't see why a points finish is out of the question for Toro Rosso, especially at Mexico, which I wouldn't say evens out the power unit deficits because of the altitude, but they're definitely going to be more competitive, and they have more reason to be competitive at Mexico. So despite this qualifying session being useless, still some good things for them to take away from this session. Next up is Haas, the home team, of course, who I think disappointed. I think they disappointed today. Grosjean qualifying in 8th. I didn't think he'd be at the front of the midfield, but being out-qualified by Hülkenberg in the Renault, I'm afraid, I wouldn't say not good enough, but I think he probably should have done better because, again, the Haas is better around this track, in my opinion, than the Renault. Even though Grosjean was out-qualified by Hülkenberg and Magnussen by Sainz, just look at Q2 where Hülkenberg, again, I think was lucky to get through. Grosjean was clearly faster, and in Q1 as well, so I don't think there's any excuse for Grosjean to be behind Hülkenberg. That's quite disappointing. And for Kevin Magnussen, he's having one of those weekends, isn't he? Those non-existent, just going through the motion weekends. He has this a bit too often, in my opinion. I think he needs to step it up a bit more. I think since the summer break, he has been clearly worse than Roman. Roman has been way better than Kevin since the summer break. And I think for Kevin, I just see him having a poor end to 2018, really. I mean, the first half of the season, he was so good. But again, since Spa, the only race he's been good at was Russia. And he only just held off the 2 Force Indias for P8. So he wasn't amazing at Russia, and got mugged around the outside by Charles Leclerc at turn 3 in Russia. So, yeah, Magnussen definitely has got worse since the summer break. I don't know if it's because maybe Haas told him, or maybe he signed a new contract for 2019, and like Perez is kind of settled now, and now doesn't really have to work as hard going forward for the rest of this season for a seat. But, yeah, he definitely has to step it up. He has to. He has to, because, you know, it's not like Haas are in a position where they don't need to go out and get results. They are in a massive battle with Renault for 4th in the Constructors. If they get 4th, that could be the difference for next year or in a few years' time in terms of the prize money. If Magnussen starts performing, Haas will get 4th. If he doesn't, then it's going to be a bit more difficult. If Grosjean doesn't beat the Renaults tomorrow, I think because the next race is Mexico, and again, it kind of evens out the deficits in power units, I think Haas are going to have a pretty tough time to get that 4th place. I think this race tomorrow is a very key moment for Haas in their short history so far in F1. It's a very important moment. They have to beat Renault tomorrow, and hopefully they do, because I want to see them finish 4th instead of Renault. I'm not a hater of Renault or anything, but I just want to see the little guy, as you'd say, beat the bigger manufacturer to 4th place. I think Haas have been better than Renault this season in terms of pace, and I just think on pace they deserve it more than Renault. So hopefully they do show up tomorrow in front of their home fans, of course. And finally, we go on to Sauber. Now with Marcus Ericsson, I have to say, 19th, that's nowhere near where he should be. At least he should be getting, 13th and 14th. He was so good yesterday in wet conditions. I don't get why he was so far off today. Maybe it's just struggling to find grip on this very green track today. I don't know. I don't know, but not good enough by Marcus Ericsson. But for Charles Leclerc, again, showing why he has been employed by Ferrari for 2019 alongside Sebastian Vettel. And let's go through how his qualifying just shaped up. So guys, in qualifying 1, he was only 13th. Sauber were not that great in qualifying 1. Again, Ericsson was 19th. So Sauber was struggling to get going. But then in Q2, Charles Leclerc, 6th place. Great lap to get into 6th. And I remember some of you guys in the chat for the qualifying watch along were going crazy and saying, oh, this Leclerc guy is fantastic. And I agree. That was great. But even though 9th is a good result, I will say I am slightly disappointed. Slightly disappointed because, again, he was 6th in Q2, so it was possible for him to be higher than 9th. So, yeah, I am slightly disappointed, but I'm not going to say he was bad or anything, or he should have done better. I thought he did well, had a great qualifying, and this is, I believe, his 5th Q3 appearance of 2018. Remember, guys, again, in a Sauber, this time last year, Sauber were right at the back of the grid and kind of cut off from the rest of the grid. Quite incredible to think that in 1 year, they are now getting into Q3 with Charles Leclerc. Very, very good from him. And, well, hopefully he has a good race tomorrow. And I think he will. I think he'll be a points finisher for sure. But, guys, what do you think about those 4 teams? For Williams, do you think there's an outside chance of points if there is chaos tomorrow and they do get a good start off the line? For Toro Rosso, can they do anything? And also, what do you think of Honda's latest improvements to their power unit? For Haas, what did you think of their qualifying? What do you think of Kevin Magnussen since the summer break? Do you think, like me, he's dropped off? Or he just maybe hasn't dropped off, but just is a bit unlucky, I guess? And what do you think Haas need to do tomorrow in what is, I think, a vitally important race tomorrow? And for Sauber, what did you think for Charles Leclerc? What did you think of his performance? Again, Q2, 6th place in a Sauber. Can't believe I'm saying that. But yeah, put in the chat below and I will read out your comments and questions for the next 5 or so minutes. Gerswin, Charles is really impressive. He absolutely is. Very, very impressive indeed. JB, France, Britain, Germany, Russia, USA. Yep, it's his 5th Q3. I thought so. So good to see that I'm correct. Can't wait for Max versus Leclerc in the future. Neither can I. Hopefully Max, by, I don't know, 2020 or 2021, gets in a car that can go for race wins consistently. And hopefully Ferrari continue to be at that race-winning level. Because imagine Max and Leclerc and maybe Hamilton if he's still around and Vettel. You're looking at a great battle for the World Championship. And, you know, maybe Pierre Gasly. Maybe he'll surprise next season. We'll have to see. JB, which Toro Rosso confirmed their penalty first? Basically, which driver is starting behind? I believe it is Pierre Gasly who will start in front of Hartley, I believe. But I might be wrong on that. But let's be honest, does it even matter? They're going to be starting at the back anyway. Yeah, it doesn't really make a difference, in my opinion. But I think it is Gasly ahead of Hartley. JB, they're both quite inconsistent, but on their day, they can pull out a great result. Also, Force India is 4th best. I guess you're talking about Haas. Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that statement. Christopher Mann, light rain in Austin, F1 Kota now should be good for tomorrow. Hopefully it does rain. Imagine tomorrow's race in wet conditions. That would be amazing. A great end to the championship if Hamilton does go on to win it tomorrow. Kind of similar to 2015. I'd love to see a 2015 race tomorrow. Sandman, Haas were foolish to re-sign their drivers. Their drivers are holding them back. 4th best car of the year without question. I see your criticism, but I want to ask you, Sandman, who would you put in the car instead? Who would you replace them with? Because I'm not seeing anyone out there who's way, way better. You could argue there are some drivers that are slightly better. Drivers like Ocon, but Ocon would not get into that seat because he signed up as a Mercedes contracted driver. Maybe Verline, but again, Verline's not proven in a midfield car. I'll agree with that slight criticism. Yeah, who do you think, Sandman, would do a better job? Put it in the chat, and I'll make sure to read it out before I go. Christopher Mann, I'm at F1 now in Austin. Good to hear. Hopefully you're enjoying yourself, and hopefully you'll enjoy the Grand Prix. Should be clear and drive for the race tomorrow at Kota. Looks like Hamilton will be front pole. Okay. Just looking at Connor Chapman. The Haas cars looked comfortable on Kota. K-Mag isn't looking in it. I thought you were going to say fit then, but no, you said in it. Okay. Yeah, K-Mag just doesn't look like he's at it this weekend. It looks, again, like one of those non-existent, I can't really be bothered weekends that he does have sometimes. So, yeah, a bit disappointing, but this is just the way he is. You have to accept that some drivers are just the way they are. Scotty, I still think Max winds up at Mercedes to replace Lewis someday. Oh, that's a difficult one. Out of the current top 3, I think that's the least likely team he'll go to. I think the most likely team he'll leave for is Ferrari, because I think that there has been discussions since he entered F1 for Max to go to Ferrari. If you remember, I think was it Austria in 2017. There was big rumours that Max has signed a pre-contract for Ferrari for the future. So, you know, maybe Max has something lined up in case Red Bull don't get their act together with Honda. I think Max might have a trigger in his contract. That's my belief anyway. Tonka Toy Truck, Ricciardo may wish he had gone to Haas instead of Renault. I see your point, but again, we have to see what happens in 2019. I would put more money on Renault being better in 2019 than Haas because, you know, it's new regulations to do with the aerodynamics, and the teams with more money, I think, are probably going to do better on this side throughout the season in 2019. So I think Renault should outdevelop teams. But then again, I thought that would happen this season, and they haven't done that. They haven't done that at all. They've actually got worse since Canada when they were best of the rest. Prussia, do you think that Red Bull will really leave if Honda F up? I don't think they will, but I think the Helmut Marko quote, I think from a couple of months ago that I covered on This Week in F1, I think it was the episode... Which episode was it? It was episode 1 of This Week in F1. You can go check it out if you want. It's in the playlists. I think he said that if Red Bull, Honda and the partnership doesn't work, then Red Bull will be going. I don't believe that, but I think it's the... How do I describe this? it's the realist quit threat yet, because it is kind of plausible to see why they would quit. Because if Honda doesn't work out, who is going to supply them? Mercedes aren't, because they know Red Bull will beat them. Ferrari aren't, because Red Bull and Ferrari just don't like each other as teams. And again, Ferrari know what Red Bull would do with a Ferrari engine. Renault are not going to go back with Red Bull in a long time, maybe a quarter of a century, like with McLaren and Honda. Those two companies are fractured beyond repair. And if Red Bull and Honda don't work, then of course they're going to split. So what do? Do they build their own engine? Or do they encourage Porsche to come in and make, I don't know, come in and make an engine and then name it Tag, like McLaren had in the 80s? I don't know. What do you guys think? I don't really know. But I think it's the realist quit threat yet. Do you think Kimi's only chance to overtake Lewis is into turn 1? That's an Usman Khan. Yes, I think it is. I think Lewis has too much pace on the, I think, better tyres for the race. Gerswin. Ricardo wants a constructor for the future. Also, on another vein, I believe Honda will come good. I think Honda will keep getting better if they stick to the trajectory they're going on. If they stick on that trajectory, they should keep getting better and pull away from Renault, even though Renault are designing a new power unit for 2019, which will probably go tits up as usual. If they continue the way they're going, Honda should, I think by 2021 or 2022, should start consistently going for race wins if they continue to improve. Because you have to remember, Honda have a lot of money. They're a massive company. Their workforce at the Honda factory in Japan is massive. Maybe bigger than Mercedes and Ferrari, you could argue. They've spent a lot of money on their project so far since 2015. They've spent over $1 billion, I think. So if they continue to spend that kind of money and keep improving, there's no reason why they can't close the gap. I'll just say that. Right, I'll read out a couple more comments, guys, and then I will end this stream. Thank you guys for coming along. I know we haven't had many viewers, but it's understandable because it is almost 3 o'clock in the morning in the UK. But for anyone in the UK or Europe who has come along, thank you so much. We have about 40 people watching live. Thank you, guys. And if you're new, don't forget to subscribe either on the bottom right of the screen, click on my channel name, or click on the link in the description which goes to my channel page. And yeah, subscribe to the channel. Right, I'll read out a couple more and then I will get on to ending this stream and let you guys know as to what's coming up tomorrow. Prussia, Red Bull Porsche would be amazing if it would work out. It'd be great to see Porsche come back into the sport. It really would, because I think it's due time that they come back. They built engines for McLaren, I believe, in the 80s, the Tag badged engines, and they were a works team in F1 in the 1960s. So it's about time they come back. Maybe they won't want to because they want to do other things. I don't know, like a GT3 or, I don't know. I'm not very educated in what Porsche are doing right now, I'll admit, but I think it's due time that they come back and, I don't know, just try and build a legacy in F1, because Porsche, I think, are kind of a forgotten constructor and manufacturer of the sport that doesn't really get talked about. So, yeah, I'd love to see that. Just looking at the chat now for my final question or comment to end on. There's very good ones here. Keep putting in the chat if you have any quick ones, and I'll try and see if I can end on that. E7 Suspect says he thinks Renault and Force India will jump Haas next year. I think Renault will. Not sure about Force India though. Right, I'll end on this. It's a bit random, but I think it's relevant to the future. This is from Prussia. Do you think Mick Schumacher will drive an F2 next season? Yes, I think he will. I think it'll be announced probably in December or January time that he'll be going to Formula 2 for 2019, and hopefully does well in that series, and then maybe gets into F1 for 2020 or 2021. Just to answer that little thread in the comments, KFC are sponsoring Toro Rosso because of Sean Gelael, and I believe Gelael has some kind of ties with that company, or a country that has ties with that company. I'm not quite sure, but it's because of Sean Gelael, who was a Friday driver in Practice 1. But guys, that is it for this qualifying review, and this is what is coming up tomorrow on the channel at 10 past 6 UK time, a lot earlier than we have gone live today. Will be the race watch along, so hopefully you guys can join me for that to hopefully enjoy, I think, what should be a good US Grand Prix. And then at 9:30 PM, that's about 45 minutes after the race ends at the Circuit of Americas, we will do a race reaction for about an hour to what's happened at the US Grand Prix. So again, hopefully you guys can join me for that. It'd be great to have you along and great to see your reactions and just interact as always. But guys, thank you very much. Again, thank you for coming along. For people in the UK and Europe and even, you know, in Australia and Asia, thank you for coming along at what is a bit of a weird time, I know, but I'm afraid because qualifying started so late here in the UK, this is what we've been dealt with. So yeah, if you missed out on this stream, I'm sure you're watching it now in the daytime, which is all fine, because I understand that a lot of you want to get off to bed, so that's all good. But again, thank you guys for coming along and tuning in and watching this qualifying review live. Just to say as well, in case you didn't know, race reviews as well from now on will be live. So I'll be live with the race review at 4 PM on Monday afternoon / early evening UK time until about 5:15 for the race review. But guys, again, don't forget to subscribe for more content like this. I do this for every race weekend for the Formula 1 season. Either subscribe on the bottom right of the screen, click on my channel name, or click on the link in the description that goes to my channel page. Like this video, comment down below what you thought of this video, what you thought of qualifying, some of the performances, who did well, who did not do well, and what do you think will happen in tomorrow's 2018 United States Grand Prix. And as well, don't forget to join our Discord server, link below in the description, and hopefully Niblo will quickly put a link for the Discord up, or someone will, for the Discord, so you can join our great community over there. We have about 75 people. So far in the server. I'm aiming to get it up to about 100 by the end of the year. That might be unrealistic, but who knows, maybe we can get it there for the end of the year. And as well, don't forget to follow me on Twitter, another great place to keep up to date with my channel. I usually post updates as to when I'm going live. I'll post updates saying I'll be live in an hour or something like that. So don't forget to follow me on Twitter at Chaz6110. And as well, guys, ChazRHD.com, link below in the description. Another way to keep up to date with my channel. But guys, until tomorrow for the 2018 United States Grand Prix race watch along, I will see all of you then.